Okay. You ready? Let's do this. You're listening to Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. This is the podcast that delves deep into the outdoors, will inspire, inform, and get you stoked to explore. And I'm your host, David Webb. Welcome to episode 3 of Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. I'm David Webb. I love the Canadian Arctic. It's not just the rugged open landscapes, or the fascinating wildlife, or just the feeling of being in one of the last untouched places on Earth. It's all of that, but it's more. It's the human story of the land that has truly captivated me. I've been north of 66 5 times, by land, sea, and air, and I'll return again. But I'm a tourist. My guest today is joining me from Inuvik, Northwest Territories, a small town located at the end of the Dempster Highway. His name is Kylik Kisoun Taylor, and he operates Tundra North Tours, an outfitter that merges outdoor adventure with rich indigenous cultural experiences. I first met Kylik in 2016 when he toured me from Inuvik by boat to Tuktoyaktuk. En route, we hiked in the delta and met locals in a traditional whaling camp, before continuing on past the Pingos into the Arctic Ocean, which was full of belugas, to the remote town of Tuktoyaktuk, or Tuk as I call it now. It remains one of my most memorable and meaningful travel experiences. I wrote about it in the winter 2016 issue of Explore. Writer Margot Fife also covered one of Kylik's trips in our winter 2018 issue. But there is so much more to this story than that. It's a tale of cultural rediscovery and meaningful economic enterprise in the north. And you know what? Pink Floyd comes into the mix too. And as you listen to the interview, keep in mind that Kylik is only 34 years old. So stay tuned for Kylik Kisoun Taylor. Kylik, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, no problem, man.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
So I'm calling you from Vancouver, British Columbia, and where are you right now?
Inuvik, Northwest Territories.
Inuvik. That's great. And just for our listeners who might not know exactly where that is, can you give them a rough idea of where your home base is?
It's 200 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle and about 140 kilometers from the Arctic Ocean. It used to be as far as you could drive in the north. The Dempster Highway ended in Inuvik, and then now they have a new highway going all the way to the Arctic Ocean to Tuktoyaktuk. So
that's right. That just opened, was it last year?
I think the year before.
Year before, yeah. So it's mid-March. It's pretty mild here in Vancouver. What's it like up there right now?
We're getting a real crazy, beautiful weather. I think it was only -4 yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's way too warm, but it was nice anyways.
Is that negatively affecting anything you're trying to do then? Or are things thawing up or breaking up right now?
Yeah, the village that we build has a lot of stuff made out of ice and also snow. And when it gets to be that warm, this even though it's not below zero, the sun really pounds on that stuff and kind of starts to melt it. So it just means it won't last as long, and we have to do a lot more maintenance to keep it, frozen.
So the village you're talking about, is that a base camp out on the tundra?
Yeah, it's a base camp that we have for our Northern Lights viewing and part of our packages that we build in the middle of a lake. We do our igloo overnight experience there, and we do cultural experiences there, Northern Lights viewing. So yeah, we have we go out there and we have big bonfires and stuff like that, and people can listen to stories and go and play Inuit games in the igloos, and then overnight in the igloos. We do workshops where people come out and build their own igloo and then sleep in it. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's when it gets this warm, it kind of starts to melt a bit.
I see. And maybe it's not quite the Arctic experience people thought they were going to get when it's only -4. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more enjoyable, I think.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you come north, I think it's kind of a neat experience to experience that kind of cold.
Yeah, definitely. I think about, as you know, I've been up there a couple times, but I've never been up to your part of the world in winter. And one thing I always think about is the darkness. For any listeners who might have forgotten, when you're north of the Arctic Circle, you'll get periods of 24 hours of darkness and 24 hours of light in the summer. So when is that darkness period for you up in Inuvik?
Basically, the whole month of December.
Okay.
Till about January 6th is all dark. It's 40 days.
Wow. So what do you do during that time? What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, you throw a headlamp on and you go about your day. It's not really, to me, it doesn't really affect that much. I kind of like it. I think it's after going through 80 days of 24-hour sunlight and working really hard in the summer. And, cause you've been on one of our trips, like, you don't get home until 4 p.m, but then I don't get home until 1 a.m.
That's true.
So it's, I use that time to sort of get some relax, some R&R and, read the books you didn't get to read and watch some movies. And it's kind of hibernation mode for me.
Yeah. Are you running tours during that time, or are you closed during that time?
We can offer tours during that time, but it's just so dark and cold and there's not going on that we try to push people to later in the winter when the sun is up and, they can do the activities that they want to. So, I mean, we've had people that specifically want to come up to experience that 24-hour darkness and the sunrise festival that we have here. And yes. Yeah. It's a really great experience, but most people would rather be able to go see the reindeer in the sunshine than, try when it's dark, which makes sense to me. So we try to push people to mid-February to mid-April for winter stuff, but we're open all year round and can do whatever people, whatever the season will allow us. December is sort of a build month for us. That's when we build the village. I really enjoy building stuff. It's really good physical work, and it's a lot less stressful than, tourists and that. So it's a great month. I really enjoy that time of year.
So what are the days like now in March?
We have about 10 hours of light right now.
Okay.
10, 11 hours worth of light. It's a lot warmer than when the dark. The sun is quite powerful. It really, between the night and the day can be 10 degrees difference. It's beautiful. The sun this time of year, it's just so intense, and with all the white snow. So it's like this really kind of bright, blinding type of thing. And it's really kind of nice because you can get out and snowmobile with the reindeer and drive the new highway and go on the ice road and do all these fun experiences. But there's still enough dark that, by 9, I think it was 10 o'clock yesterday, Northern Lights were out,
Oh, wow.
Instead of having to stay up till 4 a.m. to see the Northern Lights, like you could see them at, 10 o'clock at night. So
that's quite nice. Yeah.
This is a great time of year, I think, to come up. March is my favorite. Once you get kind of late, like mid-April, late April, we can still operate for the most part on most of our excursions, but it's getting close to that 24-hour mark for daylight. Like you're getting to like 16 hours. So if you want to see the Northern Lights, you're starting to be like, okay, you can't really physically see them until 3 or 4 in the morning because of the light that's around.
And so what are the tours you're running right now in March? What are some of the highlights that people are coming up for?
The main one is our Canadian reindeer signature experience, which is
and anyone who reads Explore magazine might remember that from the winter issue. Margot Fife wrote a great article on it, but I'll let you get into it even more.
Yeah, she was awesome, and it's not very often you have somebody that you really kind of connect with, and I really connected with Margot, and she's been around the North so much, so it was really not only great to have her write articles, but it was really great to get her feedback on the trip and what she thought and, things we can improve and things that we were doing well, because she's really been around the block and she had a lot of positive things to say about what we're doing. And I was really pleased with that.
Yeah, that's great. She's done a lot of Arctic tourism for sure. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. She was saying our trip was the best experience that she had. That was like a commercial experience.
Oh yeah.
She's a writer. So she gets to go on these crazy hunts with, in Greenland and like things that you can't, like the average person can't just do. So she was saying this was the best commercial, something that anybody could do. This was the best experience. So that's what we want, right? Like
that's very high praise coming from her, because she would have had multiple trips to compare it to.
Yeah. And it was really, because that's what we're aiming to do, is to try to make, experiencing the North the way it is, the way it used to be, and really getting immersed in it, but also doing it in a way that's comfortable and safe and reliable, so that a lot of times you come to the North, you might come to see narwhal. If they don't show up, you didn't see them, you didn't really get what you wanted. And most trips in the Arctic, a lot of them are like that, if you don't see the lights, then what did you do all day? We designed our trip so it was like full of activities and like learning about culture and participating in culture, and all of the highlights of our trip are guaranteed that you're going to see them. And so that's a big difference. Like you don't have to come here for 3 weeks to have an Arctic experience while you're waiting for something to happen. We make things happen while you're here so that you can get it done in 4 days, and it's a busy 4 days. Really, we're just finishing one right now. They're just finishing their town tour and then back to the airport. And these guys were just so happy the whole time they're like, wow, like
in a nutshell, what did they experience?
Yeah, so it starts right off. You get off the plane and we meet you out there, and we give you your winter gear. My mom makes all of our winter gear, so it's like traditional parka.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so they get to wear the same clothes we get to wear, and they really enjoy that. And also, it's much warmer, so we want them to be comfortable. And then we start driving the ice road to Kylik. So that's one of the highlights. Most people in the world have never seen snow, and let alone drove on a river. That used to be we used to be boating on it.
Where were these people from?
France.
Okay, so very unique experience for them.
And so we get them to the Kylik. We go and visit my friends, Annie C. and Danny Gordon, who have a little craft store there, and we visit with them, and they tell stories. Danny walked from Alaska, so he's got it. They both have such amazing stories, and we enjoy a cup of coffee and buy some art from them, and listen to how they make it. They do sewing and carving and things like that. And then we get them back, and then we stop at our Aurora Village. We have an igloo Aurora Village, we call it. And so they get to go there, cook food over the open fire, have a traditional meal, learn about how it was, preserved and caught and harvested, and the history behind it. And then we have a large igloo that fits 12 people, bring them in there, and we play Northern games and like Inuit hand games and bone games, and we teach them about how to play the game, so they get to play it. And they also get to learn about why we had the games. Like a lot of the games are to deal with like physical strength and dexterity and all these things that you would need to have to be a successful hunter here. And we get to do all that. We have like a seal, oil lamp called a Kylik that we light up and show them that, and that's what heats the igloo. And so it's a unique experience for them. They really love that. And then at nighttime we have a fire going, and we cook reindeer and bannock on a stick, and we tell stories, and we enjoy some hot beverages while we wait for the Northern Lights. And then they get to sleep in their own igloo. And the way we have the igloos set up are very, very comfortable. Like we've had a lady named Beth. She was 91 years old, and it was -40, and she slept in the igloo and was perfectly comfortable. So we put a lot of work into making sure it's comfortable. So they have this. That's the thing. I think that's where you should aim to be, is like an authentic experience, but done comfortably. I mean, nobody really wants to. The market for people that want to go sleep in an igloo traditionally with just a seal oil lamp and no heated. You're not used to that weather, so it's going to be miserable for you.
Yeah.
So we set it up so it's like, okay, the seal oil lamp is going. It's exactly the way we used to sleep in it, but the only difference is that we run a bit of heat to the blanket, and it makes it enjoyable, and you can sleep all night.
Yeah, no, that's a big difference, because I mean these people are still ultimately coming on a vacation, right? So
and also they're most of them are kind of scared about the experience until you show them some reviews about people saying it's comfortable, and tell them how you do it, because they're just thinking like maybe they're 65 years old and retired, and maybe they don't want to have to struggle all night and then get up early in the morning and have to snowmobile all day to the reindeer. Like that's not like you said, they're on holidays, so we put a lot of work into making sure that it's comfortable for them and enjoyable. And then the next day we take them, we're at the village for half a day. We do an igloo building workshop. We hike through the trails where we have a makeshift trapping trail, so people can see what it's like to trap. We don't actually physically trap there.
Mm-hmm.
Have it set up so that we could teach people how it's done and how we used to do it. And then we do some snowmobile training, and then we start driving on the new highway up to Tuck. So driving on that new highway, which is absolutely gorgeous. We get to Tuck, and if there's aurora, we get out onto the Arctic Ocean to watch the aurora. So that's pretty awesome experience. And they have a pingo in the middle of town. Like it just looks
I remember it.
Like it looks just like a big hill, but from the top of that, you can see 360, and it's pretty neat to see Northern Lights over the ocean and over top an Arctic town. So it's
yeah. And do you want to just tell our listeners what a pingo is really quickly?
Sure. It's a land formation in the Arctic that happens when a lake dies. We have permafrost here, so the land is frozen year round, but underneath the lake, it's not frozen. So when that lake drains, all that water has to freeze. It can't expand out because it's surrounded by ice. So it has to get pushed up. So the land actually gets pushed up. I think the tallest one is about 170 feet tall. So they're pretty unique to this area, and Inuit people use them for scouting. And they also dug pits into them for ice houses so that they could store their meat and things like that. So they're, just a beautiful, unique landmark in Tuk.
I notice all the trips that you run, it has this one side is, getting out in the land and it's an adventure side, but everything is so interwoven with the traditional cultures of the land. And how did that concept come about that you wanted to merge the culture and outdoor adventure all in one?
Well, it came from my personal experience. So I'm Inuit and Gwich'in, but I didn't grow up here, and I didn't grow up with my culture at all. Just, books and what you see on movies, stories from my dad that, stories about the North, but they weren't really culturally related.
Because you grew up in Ontario.
Yeah, right? I grew up in Ontario. Yep. So when I moved back here when I was 16, I was very lucky to have my family, like my Uncle Jerry, Kisoun, took me under his wing. My adopted mom, Clara Day, took me under her wing, and I got to go out, hunting and whaling and fishing and all of these just unbelievable experiences, like tagging beluga whales on the Arctic Ocean when you're 16. You've never seen a whale before, you've never been to the ocean before, and so I got to eat the food and learn about the traditions and hear the language. That was a really transformative experience for me, and it had a really positive effect on my life. And so I started thinking like, wow, this could really, I think it helps people. Like, I really think travel is like a form of like self-help, I really think it's important. And so I just remember thinking like, this is such a cool culture, and it's just amazing. And it had such a great effect on me. And I was wondering like, well, how could other people have this experience? Not just Inuit people have this experience, because people in my region aren't really having that experience either. They're not. I don't think the average Inuit person here gets to go whaling or gets to go hunting. Like I remember being here and taking my friends out hunting, and it was the first time they'd been hunting their whole life. And, so it's kind of so I remember just thinking like, how can I recreate this and be able to share it with as much people as possible? And that obviously the really only answer for that would be tourism. Like unless you're like rich or something, or you really have to find a way, I believe, to connect the culture back to a resource. So now that, with tourism, you can go out, you can make a living, but you can also come home with like the fish you caught while you were out.
Right.
So you're coming home with two different types of resources, like the traditional resource, which is food, and just the well-being of being, understanding who you are and what you're about. And then also the resource of like, okay, I made a wage today and I can pay some bills and live in today's society. And so tourism was obviously the safe bet, like the only real where you could do it private enterprise, and it's not some government funded thing, which I don't really think a lot of those things work that great, because they're, so dependent on if they get funding, where if you have a business, if it runs properly, you'll fund yourself.
What specifically would you mean by the government funded?
Like the on the land programs and things that they do for kids. And
oh, I see. Yes.
And they're constantly having a hard time like fighting for multi-year funding, and they only get the kids out for small periods of time, I find. And
so rather than running like a camp for kids, you wanted to actually have a self-sustaining business.
Self-sustaining business is where these kids could come out, experience their culture as part of like as a kind of a relative tourist, but then they have the opportunity to actually work with us. And it's just like learning a language. If you don't immerse yourself in that language, you're very unlikely to learn it. And so with culture, the positive aspects of what you get from culture, you can't really get them from just going on a trip for 3 days once a year. I find if you had, like the people that work with us, the guides that we have, they're constantly working within their culture and learning about it. And it's fresh to them every day. And they're out there all the time building igloos and other things like that. And I feel like that is where the real benefit comes. It's just like if you needed to go to therapy, could you go to therapy for 3 days a year? it's just not going to stick. So I find like if we can create more jobs on the land-based jobs and have people out there for longer periods of time and make it part of their lifestyle, then you're more likely to preserve that culture and see like a positive return on experiencing that culture.
Yeah, and then that's the other benefit of the business. Rather than say running a couple camps a year, you're cycling in groups, 10, 11 months of the year, or however often you're doing it.
I really think the future of tourism, especially for indigenous people, is like high end, like high experience, unique, transformative experiences with indigenous people. I think that's like, that's where the market's going. People aren't as interested in just seeing things anymore. They want to experience them. They want to touch them. They want to interact with them. And I think indigenous people do that really well. And it's a great fit for them. And so, I just think that if it's very difficult for, like, I can use my own personal experience so that I'm not talking for other people, but for my personal experience, if I didn't have the job that I have today, I would know very little about my culture, and I just simply wouldn't have the resources to get out on the land very much. I'm working a 9-to-5 job for somebody else. Maybe I get weekends, but then I have to go out and, build a cabin. Like it's not easy. It's not something that it's not accessible to everybody. It's accessible to very few, I find. But if you have it as a job, you can be out there all the time, and you don't need the resources to do that. And so with our company, where, our long-term plan is to be able to share those resources with community members. So if they want to come out, to do some whaling, they could come out and use our facility and, catch a ride with our tour boat, and, so that we can provide like a basically kind of a subsidized way for people to get out onto the land. But then it also makes our experience better, because if you come to see, an experience with indigenous people and there's no indigenous people out there, it's not that great. Like if you stopped at the whale camp, if it was just empty because no one could afford to be out there, it's not going to be a very good experience for you, as opposed to if you go to like a thriving village and there's people out there.
And they're just doing it. They're already out there, and you get to come along and you get to be a bit of a fly on the wall as the tourist is.
To me, I'm trying to create something that's mutually beneficial for everybody, right? So the revenue created from tourists coming to your communities is used for your community members to be able to go out there and practice and live a traditional lifestyle that for a lot of people is not possible, because just to go whaling, you need a boat, you need to take at least a week off of work, and you need to spend thousands of dollars on fuel, and you need to have a camp to go to, or at least have some tents to set up. And like, it's a lot of resources that.
Yeah. So you can see how someone might be like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that.
It's not a real option for people. I mean, it's like, expecting me to just like, fly to Toronto, and like, I don't have the resources for it. So so it's something that I think it's important that when people are doing business, like that corporate responsibility of giving back, but also if we can do it sustainably and give back to the community, then we'll have more guides that are Inuit, because they got to have it on the land experience, and then they got interested in the job. It's just a way for us to kind of keep it rolling, I find. So it's not just like I'm trying to do something that's, positive for the community. Like I want it to be mutually beneficial for everybody, right? So
that's really interesting. I mean, I can see so many different facets of how it's mutually beneficial or beneficial for everyone, because you think the guests, they're coming up, they're having this amazing experience, they're connecting with people, they're having the experiences that, you get from no matter where you live, whether you're Canadian or whether you live in Australia or whatever. Going to the Arctic is fascinating, totally different from your day-to-day life. But then you're also talking about almost re-educating, helping people in your community regain lost skills, reconnect with their culture, and turn that into an economic benefit, and really just sort of bolster the community at large, as well as spread your cultural experiences around the world. That's a nice system.
Yeah, I think it's kind of we don't see a lot of models of it in Canada, where the community involvement is really strong and mutually beneficial. And, there's a lot of over tourism, and we're starting to see that north. And it's not, people think like, oh, more money. Well, more money is, I mean, if you look at the history of the North, it's hard to say more money is positive, all the booms and busts we've had. And
and the exploitation of the resources, right? I mean,
it's hard to convince me that was a positive experience for people. Like maybe a few people got rich at the expense of other things, but I think it's just sort of a goal of mine. Those are the things that keep me motivated to try to accomplish, because I know how important it is and how beneficial it is to be connected to your culture and feel a part of something. But I also know how beneficial it is to travel and experience somebody else's culture and get their point of view. And it really opens your mind to new things. So for me, it's like, okay, yes, we have a business and we need to make money and all of these other things. But at the same time, it's like, at the end of the day, when you're dropping off your clients at the airport and saying goodbye and giving everybody hugs and things like that, they are so happy to pay to do this trip. Like that. And I find like that's like, I don't get that experience very often. Like when I pay my phone bill, I'm not like, this feels good giving these guys money because they're doing positive things for the community. It's very rare that you buy an airline.
Yeah. And even for a lot of vacation and tourism, I mean, you might say you did a week on a tropical beach, you're sort of still lamenting paying for it. Like I wish I didn't have to pay for it. I'm having a good time, but
And with a lot of our clients, they're happy because they're contributing to something that's worthwhile, and they like you as a person and as a business and what you believe in and what you're about. And so, and I find like that's kind of the only business I want to be a part of,
Yeah, for sure. And that's such a great trend that I'm seeing in a few industries, that people are really, as consumerism evolves, people start to really pay more attention to where their money's going and what it means when they spend it. So you're on the forefront of that.
People are realizing that, you can vote for Trudeau or Harper. It doesn't really, I don't find it makes much difference. What really makes a difference is how you spend your money, like voting with your dollar. If you want to help the world, then make positive choices with your money. And you know what? Making the right choice is usually more expensive, but do you really need all that stuff? Right. So, so for us, like when we have our tours, we do a lot of education on that, like education on the positive effects of the fur trade. Like, is it better for us to use petroleum products to stay warm? It's not. It's, you're much better to use these natural fibers and things. So it's, we talk about all this stuff, and I think the world needs more indigenous teachings, like how we lived here within our environment and had no negative effect on it. And they say there was 100 million people in North and South America. If we could live here with 100 million people and have no negative effect on our environment, that's pretty impressive stuff. And, I think the world today could learn a lot about that. I was talking to an old elder, and he said there were years when we would put an honest effort into just harvesting bulls, bull caribou, because, in the long run, that if you harvest the female, it takes, a lot out of the system over generations. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, there was a couple thousand of you guys, and there was 200,000 caribou. And if you look at the actual interaction, you could have hunted as many as you wanted. It wouldn't have made a difference. They cross a river and 10,000 of them drowned. There's an ice storm and 10,000 of them starve. And then every year you get 1,000 of them as a hunter. It doesn't really make any difference, but they still, even though that's the case, they still were like, you know what? There's less caribou. They had a rough winter. Let's just try to harvest what we need, and I find that so amazing, because most people are like, oh man, anything that's free, they take too much. Anything that's cheap, they take too much. They live way beyond their means, and there's a huge negative effect from that. And then you had Inuit people that were like living here with no effect on anything, still being like, oh, we better not overfish, and the fish are jumping out of the river into your boat. There's so many fish, and we're still thinking, like, let's not overfish, right? And so I find that really beautiful, and I think that's a real positive lesson that Indigenous people can, give to other people, because we're connected to our environment. So we understand, like, we don't throw things in the water because we drink that water. We don't pollute the land because we eat from the land. And most people don't. They think they're just like, I learned so much when I guide about myself, my people, and then also just people in general, because I learned from other cultures. The two guys from France were farmers, and they were telling me about how they farmed and how they traditionally did it and the cycles that they used. And it was just so fascinating, because it's so new to me. Like, I'm not a farmer. I probably never will be a farmer. not living here anyways.
Yeah. And so do you find that beyond the natural wonders and the specific cultural experiences that people might have, say the games or the storytelling, do you find people those conversations or those thoughts that people are having starting to drift more towards sustainable living and just kind of following this example and thinking more about their interaction with the land coming from these trips? They come off and be like, wow, that's interesting. Here are these people living in a rather remote area who have been for thousands of years thinking about their environment, like you said, when they never really needed to. So do you find people coming to that conclusion on their own a little bit as well?
Yeah, I do, because people are intelligent, but we don't know what we don't know. And, and it's hard for us to seek things out that aren't like the information about how we harvest caribou and preserve that caribou and use the bones for tools and art and games. And, that's not useful information per se to somebody living in Toronto. They don't need to learn how to skin a carrot. They don't need any of this stuff to survive. So it's not likely they're going to learn it or experience it or seek it out. And then they get to the point in their life where they want to see something different, the Arctic, they come up and then they learn about those things. And this is what happened to me when I came up. I didn't realize it was the information and the experiences I had and the profound impact of coming to the North. I didn't realize that I was missing that. It wasn't something I was actively looking for, consciously looking for. Subconsciously, for sure, I was looking, but consciously, I wasn't looking for that experience. And when I had it, I remember thinking to myself, oh, wow, this is what was missing, right? This connection to the land, this connection to people, this type of living, all of a sudden you think to yourself, you're like, this is what's been missing. This is that hole that this longing, this whatever you want to call it. And so, I find that people, when they have this, they come up and have this ultra authentic experience. The igloo experience is very authentic. It's heated with an oil lamp and, we're playing old games and people, you can see they're like, man, I think the hunter-gatherer lifestyle that we used to live is the best lifestyle there was. People think now it's really great because it's really comfortable. I can just turn the heat on. But then we spend 50 weeks a year working our butts off and, commuting to work. And then what do we do with our time off? We go hiking, we go hunting, we go fishing. But we used to just do that every day. you know? And so it's we've kind of flipped the switch. In a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, maybe a month a year, you didn't have to hunt and gather and you got to relax and do whatever. And then this time of, this lifestyle that we have, we work all the time. And then our month off is, the things that we used to do on a daily basis. I really love hiking. Well, you used to hike every day, man.
Yeah. So, that begs the question about what we're really doing, what you're working for. Imagine if you didn't have to work for the weekend, so to speak. You could just have this well-rounded experience every day.
Yeah, we traded. I really love that Pink Floyd song, "Wish You Were Here." You're basically trading comfort for excitement.
Yeah.
And
is it a walk-on part in the war for the lead role in the cage?
Exactly, right. Cold comfort for change and all these different things. I really read that song, really resonated with me, and I think that resonates with a lot of people because it's, if you're out in the bush, odds are there's going to be times when you're hungry. There's going to be times when you're cold or uncomfortable or whatever it is. It's not a bubble, right? But that feeling you get, you feel so alive. I don't mind the cold, I really don't. The cold doesn't bother me. It's just it's real. It's okay, this is something that's trying to kill me. I just need to put more clothes on or run around a bit and get warm. And it's real. It's not like an emotion. It's just, and so it doesn't bother me. And it makes it I love getting all geared up and being warm, but feeling the cold, seeping into your jacket, and you're out there and you're with the reindeer and you're skiing or you're doing something. And it's man, living here and being a guide here, I get to experience things on a monthly basis that people save up their whole life to have, and they have it one time. These guys got to come up here and spend one day with the reindeer, and it's going to be a highlight of their life, and they had the best time ever, and I get to do it all the time. And that's the thing about being an Indigenous guide. I'm trying to create something for me and for a lot of other people where they have that experience all the time. It's not a one-off type thing.
That's really interesting to think about that you are getting the opportunity to almost live a bucket list lifestyle so that must be really exciting for you as the guide to be able to share that with people.
It is. It's what keeps you going. I mean, I don't wake up in the morning, excited to do my accounting, but especially when we're trying something new, like the Igloo Village that we've built is new, and you have no idea if it's going to work. And you have no idea what the experience, because it's not like I could have traveled to another Igloo Village and copied what they did. All of the trips that we had, there was no blueprint. We had to make the blueprint and tweak it over time. And it's really exciting. And then when it works, when you have that first group of people in the big igloo and you're playing games and telling stories and there's interacting and people are just like lighting up and the cameras are like, people are taking pictures. And sometimes they're not taking pictures because they're so into the moment to forget their camera, which is kind of my goal. Like I'd rather, when you're on a tour and nobody's taking pictures because they're so captivated, then you're really winning.
That's the experience you'd go for. Yeah. Especially nowadays, if you can get people to put down their phone and forget to pick it up again, then you've got something pretty special.
Yeah, I think so too. And so, when you first build something and then you try it out with your friends and family, and then you have your first big group there and they just love it. And they eat it up and they think they're like, wow, because a lot of times when we design new tours, I don't tell our clients until we're doing it. So, like if,
like you don't tell them it's a new tour, you just say this, we
don't advertise it. Like we'd never advertise the Igloo experience, being in there playing the games. We didn't advertise that until we knew it worked. So basically you showed up to the Igloo Village, and then we said, here's the tour of the Igloo Village. Let's have dinner. And then, hey, why don't we check out the igloo? We go in the igloo, we play the games. They had no idea we were going to do that. We spent an hour and a half, 2 hours in there eating food, traditional food with an ulu on an ice bar, all this really cool stuff. And they're like, oh, wow, that was so amazing. I didn't know you guys did that, and it kind of blows their mind. And then once you get it dialed in, then I was like, okay, I know people enjoy it. And then I can start advertising it,
Yeah. One question I have too, when you said so as we said before, you grew up in Ontario and you went back to Inuvik at 16. That's right.
Yes.
And so, and now part of your business has been bringing back these traditional skills that some of them were lost, or like you said, a lot of the people who live up there aren't necessarily doing these things. So how do you go and educate people and help train people on skills that are being mostly lost?
I went to Igloo University.
Okay.
So a lot of the things, this is something like a really interesting topic, I think, that maybe I'll get into a little bit, because today's culture, like especially indigenous culture, because of what happened to indigenous people over the last couple hundred years, schools and colonization and the Indian Act and all these things that basically made it illegal to be who we are. There's a huge gap. There's multiple generations that know very little about their culture because they were, of course, they weren't allowed to know it. And so now that those rules have changed and society is a little bit more positive to Indigenous people, what you're finding is young people are actively seeking out their culture and learning and figuring it out. So I have two friends of mine, the Kisoun boys. They went out and figured out, through trial and error and talking to people how to hunt a beluga whale, because they didn't really have anybody in their family to take them out. And their mom had didn't grow up doing, so that like that part of the culture wasn't part of their life anymore. And they went out and they figured it out, and they made it happen. And I was just so proud of those guys. I thought it was so amazing for that to happen. And so they went out, they started hunting whales. And then next thing you know, their mom is out there and the grandkids are out there and other family members are out there. And so it's the only time in history that I know of where a younger generation is figuring out how things used to be. And then we're teaching our elders, elders.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. So basically you're probably looking at almost like skipping a generation or two and re-educating from the youth up.
Yeah. And I mean, not every aspect is like that, obviously, but there are certain things like, so when I went to build an igloo, like I took a job to build an igloo. I didn't know how to build an igloo. I just took the job and I'll figure it out. It can't be that hard, And so, and it is pretty hard, but so but I was, you see an opportunity, you're better to take it and figure it out. No one else was going to take it. So I couldn't find anyone in the community to teach me how to build an igloo, and no one in my family knew how to build an igloo. So I basically had to Google it and read a book and just look at it and just say, okay, this is how I think it works. And then just go out and do it. And we did it. I mean, we built it, and it was beautiful, and it worked, and it was the way we make them. And then I became the igloo guy, right? So the guy who builds one igloo is all of a sudden the igloo guy because nobody else is building them. So and then I can go back, and now I'm teaching other people how to build these igloos and trying to revitalize it, because I think it's just such an amazing structure and part of our culture. And so there's aspects of the culture that have been kind of lost. Like I'll be talking to my mother, Clara Day, who's amazing and who speaks the language, and I'll be talking to her, and I'll be reading like an old book from the 20s, and it'll be talking about how the culture was here and what people did and what the practices were. And I'll talk to her about it, and she'll say, oh, I don't think so. I don't think that was here. And then maybe a week or two later, after she's had some time to really think about it, she'll call me or text me or something, and she'll say, I remember when we were a kid, we did do that. And I was talking about the respecting animals, and you take water from your own mouth and you pour it into the mouth of the animal you harvest as a sign of respect, like giving them a drink, because the belief that we're connected spiritually to these animals that allow us to catch them, to survive, all these like amazing teachings. And then all of a sudden it kicks in her brain. She goes, I remember that. But then she went to residential school and they pounded out, right?
Oh, yeah. But that's so beautiful though, to be able to bring that back.
Well, it's just, it's such a beautiful time to be alive. Like I know a lot of really bad things happened and a lot of people are really hurting, but also you're seeing something be born, like reborn, which if you have kids and you've seen them be born, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Seeing a culture come back, seeing more people speak the language, seeing more people learn about who they are, it's super beautiful. And it's really exciting for me. And, I wish it wasn't the case. I wish we didn't have to come back.
Yeah. It was always strong, right?
But we are coming back. And it's really exciting for me because my daughter's generation, for some of them, the lucky ones, they're not having to have the same experience I had, where I had nothing of my culture and I came back and found out who I was. And I went to hunt a whale and started shooting my bow and paddling my kayak and doing all these things. And I really had to work hard to get immersed into my culture, where my daughter, she'll never tell a story like, oh yeah, I remember the first time I went out in the bush, or it's just, she's been doing it since she was born. I sent you this video that we produced and you guys could share it. I haven't put it up yet, but we did a video on, I won an award. So a video about me, and they asked Indigo, like, what's special about your culture? And she's like, everything. It's part of me. It's who I am, and she's 9 years old. If you asked me that same question at 9 years old, I had no answer for you. And that's really beautiful. Right. So, and that's what I'm trying to do. Like, I really think, if you can have a thriving tourism industry that's done right, it's not over exploitive, it's including local people and culture. That's like, my daughter wouldn't have that answer if it wasn't for Tundra North Tours.
Wow.
That wouldn't be her answer.
That's quite special. And is that resonating through the community? Would other 9-year-olds say the same in your community nowadays?
It's getting better because it's being taught in the education system. So culture is becoming more and more prevalent in the education system. So, which I think is the right way to do it, because if it's up to the families, a lot of families are living in poverty and they just don't have the resources or time, and they're really struggling. So I couldn't do what I do if I was struggling like they're struggling. I couldn't do it. And so it's good that the school system is taking it on, because it's fair for everybody gets a chance to experience. You talk to some kids and a lot of them are getting it. A lot of them are like, yeah, this is who we are and this is what we do. But the problem not a problem, but the missing step is that a lot of times they're just learning about it from reading or hearing about it from an elder, and they're not actually getting enough opportunities to practice it. If I had, as an Inuit person living down south, I only had stories and secondhand information. I didn't have, and I think it's important for all of us as humans, I think we're on this rock to expand our consciousness and have experiences and help other people. And so if you're just learning about your culture from books and secondhand, and you don't have your own story, like your own hunting story, or you built your own igloo, if you don't have that, then that's a missing piece that needs to be fixed, because it won't stick. Like the full benefit of it, it's like taking half the medicine, you know. You take all of it. And so that's something that my daughter has that a lot of kids don't, but she has lots of friends, and, you know, they come out with us and you know, play in the igloos and go sliding and stuff. So it's good. We try to include as many people as possible within reason. You know, we can't just open up everything to everybody, but yeah.
Has the language, is the traditional language strong in the youth?
No, not yet. You know, it's very difficult to learn the language. There's so few people, sharing that language and know the language. Like I had two really close people in my life, my grandfather and my mother. And, you know, my grandfather passed away, and I don't get to spend as much time with Clara as I would like. So it's really difficult for me to, like, I don't have anyone else to talk to. So it's difficult for us. Like I think the language is dying. I think there's very few people speaking it, but something that we're doing with Tundra North Tours is, and part of our long-term plan is to have, like, it's mandatory language classes. So you start at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning. You have an hour and a half of language, and then you go to work, and, you know, you're paid to do that. And, if you become proficient in your language, you're going to get paid more money as a guide, because you're going to be a better guide, and you're going to have something that, you know, like if you got to go on and like, let's say when you got to come to the whale camp, right? That was a really cool experience for you, and you got to try my kayak, and I think it was just you and I, which is amazing.
Yeah.
As amazing that experience was, if you showed up there and there was, like, you know, they were living in a traditional sod house, and you got to go in and eat the food, and everyone was speaking, you know, Inuvik and you know, talking to you and teaching you words, then the experience is even better, you know. And so I'm trying to find a way to, like everything I do in my life is based on, like, a bucket list want that I have, or a dream that I have, that we're trying to accomplish through business. So for me, you know, I would love to help revitalize the language. And if I can do that with my business, then that's something I want to do. And it's not just for my clients or my staff, it's for me and my family. Like I want to reclaim that language within my family. But if I have no one to talk to, but if I have a team of people that work with me, and we all are, you know, out building igloos and using the traditional language, doing that. And not only is that such a cool experience for people watching that experience, but imagine how beautiful that would be to be able to build an igloo, something that hasn't been, you know, it's not done here very often. Build that with other Inuit people speaking your own language. I mean, I think that would be an unbelievable experience for myself, but also for your clients, it would be, you know, pretty special. So
definitely,
that's kind of like, to me, with the tour company that I'm running, every year we get more authentic. Like this May, we're getting dogs. So eventually we're going to be dog sledding out to, you know, like we're trying to like every year implement something that's even more authentic. Like, you know, instead of stopping at the whale camp and there's, you know, a canvas tent there, we're trying to build a traditional sod house, you know, like every year we're trying to do something that makes it even more authentic. And my goal is sort of to create something that's as close to a time machine as possible. You know, like when you step in that igloo to have that igloo experience, we have light in there because it makes it easier for us. But all the bones are just made by hand, like the snow. It's as close to how it would have been 300 years ago. And I think people really resonate with that because subconsciously we lived like that for a long time, and this new way of living is brand new to us. So everybody,
I guess it's only about not even a century old, really, right? Maybe at most 80, 100 years at most. Yeah,
like 100 years ago, like it was something like 99% of people were hunters, gatherers, or farmers. You know, like everyone was connected to their environment. Everyone was, you know, catching their own food in one way or the other, and really being immersed in their environment. So when you have people come up that don't do that anymore, and then you immerse them in their environment and then immerse them in such a beautiful culture, it's just like, they can't get enough of it, you know, like they really love it. And it's so fun for me because I'm sitting there thinking like, hey man, you're having a great time. I'm getting paid to do this, you know? It must be really humbling and special for you though, to see people to come from all over the world
and engage with your traditional cultures and just be so enamored with it, so fascinated with it. I mean, how was that experience for you?
It's amazing for me to do that. I had that experience when I came here because my family was amazing and they really took me out. And so I know what that experience is like. It's easy. I think it's easier for me to create that experience because I've had it, and I think maybe it's harder for other Indigenous people if they've always had that experience. Like if they've always gone out to the teepee and had a fire and smudged and cooked. And if they've always done that, it's harder for them to think like, oh, people would pay for this and people want this, like their reality, maybe they think is other people's reality. And so for me, it's really special to have that moment. My daughter comes with me on lots of the tours and she's taking over, she's, this is the Eskimo yo-yo. And, and I'm just sitting there like, correcting little tiny things that she has wrong, filling in gaps. And like, she's 9.
That's amazing.
And she's like taking over, and those are proud moments, and those are what, like, I find like with tourism especially, it's a hard business, and then Indigenous tourism I think is even harder. You have to really cherish those moments because most of the time you're really grinding it out, but those are the moments that get you up in the morning, and then the business side of things are the things that keep you up at night,
Yeah. That's a good way. I like the way, that's a very good way of putting it. The two sides to any pursuit in a lot of ways, the things that get you up and the things that keep you up.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, like our clients, like we get Christmas cards and, like they think of us, they're like, holy cow, that was cool.
Yeah. For anyone listening who hasn't been up to the Arctic, it's a captivating place. It's captivated me from the first time I ever visited. And to this day, I'll return there over and over again. You mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, some of your plans, like the bucket list experiences that you're trying to create. So going forward, do you have some big dreams that you haven't yet implemented that you want to let us know about?
We would like to further domesticate some reindeer so that we can do the traditional sledding.
Oh, behind the reindeer?
Behind the reindeer, yeah.
Oh.
That's a big dream of mine. Also, I ran dogs for 10 years when I was about 6, I guess, when I got dogs. And I had a dog team till I moved north, actually, which is kind of funny because everyone always,
that's funny.
I talk about dog sledding. They always think I did it here, but I actually did it in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
We had a sled with wheels on it so we could run them all year round. Mm-hmm. And that's a big hole missing for me, the dog. I miss that. And I think it would make our product better and our life a lot better. So the dogs and the reindeer are a big one. And then we are just in the process of we've already done 2 feasibility studies and it looking really positive to build a big cultural lodge. So like a 20 capacity cultural lodge where all the experiences that we're currently offering now, we would be offering from the lodge. And that would
like out on the land somewhere? Or?
Right where you stopped on our first trip together when we went to the Sandy Hills and we hiked.
Okay. Oh wow, that would be amazing. Holy cow, that must be logistically, to build a lodge out there will be very challenging.
It's a big undertaking and all the numbers make sense and the market is really hungry for that type of experience. They're really hungry for the experience we offer now, but if we can offer it more comfortable from a lodge, it's going to open up the market 10 times. And also it's going to open up there's going to be 25 jobs created and, it's a very big project for us. And there's a lot about like food security and art and traditional tanning of hides. And, there's a lot of things that we plan to do from there that are going to be very, very positive for the community, but also I really feel like it's going to be one of the best experiences in the world. I think we're already there. I think we already have like our winter product, the signature experiences. We have people travel on that trip. They've been everywhere. They're well-traveled people. They've been everywhere, and they're like, "This is the best trip I've ever been on." And we're already getting that amazing feedback. And
well, I'll tell you what. From my perspective, when I came up to Tuck via the Mackenzie River Delta with you. I had just been in Inuvik National Park for 5 days, which is stunningly gorgeous. Hiked. I was exhausted and I was like, nothing's going to beat that, but I'm going to do this day out of Inuvik anyway, whatever. And when I come back, I often think of the day with you more than I actually think of the 5 days in the national park.
I love the park, but like, I think if you can watch an old movie from the 20s and it can really hit home and you can think it's, the story is really great, but the graphics are crap, right? Like it's older and this and that. but the story, if it resonates with you, and it will be your favorite movie. And I find the same thing with our experiences. Like, maybe there's places that have more beautiful mountains. Maybe there's places that have more beautiful oceans, or maybe there's places that have other ways to get to the Arctic, but we make it personal, like we try to incorporate culture, and not just showing you the culture, letting you interact with it, and answering your questions and being real. Like, we don't sugarcoat things. Like, if you ask me about residential school, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to, I'm going to say, this is what happened, and this is what's still happening. And people, I find that's what really sticks home with them. It's not so much like being at the whale camp per se. It's the people that are there that make it. Like
for sure. Yeah.
Like Orlando's there, and he's salvaging a fish net that he found that washed up on shore, and setting his own fish net and catching, he caught 3 fish with it. And you're like, wow, dude, like, you're really figuring it out. And I showed up there with a bow and arrow one time, and then the next week I went back, he had built his own bow and arrow, and I was just like, man, this is so cool to see. And I think that's what really sets us apart. And so, some people are saying like, oh, how do I start a cultural experience? And I was like, man, I in my briefcase when I travel, I have a pair of snow goggles, a little bone game, and I just pull it out every once in a while, and show people. And just that aspect, just that one thing, like if I'm at dinner for somebody and be like, hey, you want to see something cool? And I pull this thing out and play this little game with them, and they're like, whoa, maybe I could. And that makes the dinner, like, they'll remember that dinner because of the interaction that I had with them. They're not going to remember like, ooh, the steak was so good. Or, I don't think that's the main thing. Like, even when we get comments about how good the food is, we're not chefs. Like, we're not like, spending hours. It's like, this is caribou soup, it's pretty simple. It's super tasty, but I think it's just the fact that it's caribou, you're having it in an igloo, that's what I think. And so, I'm happy to hear that you had a good time.
Oh, definitely. So going forward into the summer and the winter this year, what are some of the trips that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah. So we're in the process that I want to start. We're building a what we call the teepee camp. So we have 4 different kind of camps that we create for people. So this year we're finishing off our teepee camp. So we're building a traditional ice house, so people will be able to go down and experience that. But also for my family, because when we hunt whales, like, we can only get so much because we have limited freezer space, and same with hunting and all these things. So we're building this big ice house so that we can preserve our own food, and then also have our clients go down and experience that, because it's really amazing experience.
Yeah.
And we're
so is that like the one that's used to be in Tuck, that's ground?
Yeah, exactly. So then people will be able to experience that. And so, so we're updating, like, our Mackenzie Delta tour used to be just kind of it was a great trip, but we couldn't stop anywhere. We didn't have any place to stop. So we just were in the boat for 4 hours, and we went through creeks and channels. Maybe we did a bit of fishing. We did this thing, but now we have a destination, so you can stop, you can go and have some soup in the teepees. You can visit the ice house. You can walk through the trails and learn about trapping and the traditional medicines and the foods that we ate. And it just makes it such a more, like you're saying, like a cultural experience as opposed to a boat ride, And we're going to be offering overnights there as well. So people will be able to come out and enjoy the peace and quiet. And we have a big lake or kayaking. And so I'm really excited for that. That's the big project I want to finish this summer. We're about halfway done. So, and then we're going to be building a big, cabin there. My plan is to actually live out there. So, before the lodge gets finished. And so, so that's an exciting thing that we're doing. So you'll be out there
almost full time. Is that your plan in the cabin?
Yeah. I mean, in the winter time, it's only about a 20-minute commute by boat. And, And I mean, there's no better commute than boat, that's the funnest way to get to work, I think.
In the summer.
Yeah. And then in the winter time, the ice road goes right by.
So
15-minute drive to get to town. So the plan is to live out with family and just commute back and forth to school. I mean, people think I'm kind of crazy. Like, the vast majority of people, like how long is your commute to work?
Well, I work from home a lot, but you're exactly right. Most people commute a lot more than 15 minutes. I'll tell you that much for sure.
My dad used to commute 2 hours one way.
Yeah. I mean, my wife just works downtown, and we basically live downtown, and it's half an hour, just
yeah. And it's probably not as enjoyable as driving on the ice road with no traffic.
Definitely it is not.
And so and my plan is to eventually, my daughter wants to dog sled to school. That's her goal. She's like, I want to have
you got to do a video for that. There's someone dog sledding to school. That would be incredible.
She'll dog sled to school eventually, a couple times a week, and that will help us train the dogs. And so, that's our plan
that's amazing. Wow. There's a lot going on. So if anyone listening wanted to look you up and find out more about your tours, how would they do that?
The best thing is to check out the website. We have all the social media stuff too. And we're posting quite a bit on that, some cool information and videos and things. So we're really easy to find. And
that's tundranorthtours.com. And they have a beautiful Instagram account too. So you look them up. That's worth following. I really appreciate your time today, Kylik. That was a really fascinating chat.
Hey man, I enjoyed it.
Maybe this interview has you considering how you travel, how you connect with the land, and where your money goes when you spend it. Or maybe it just has you hankering for a trip to the Arctic. If you haven't been, go. It's easier than you think and will leave you a changed person, for the better. So check out tundranorthtours.com and follow them on Instagram at Tundra North Tours. I'm David Webb. Thanks for joining me today.